Oklahoma lawmakers begin a series of public meetings to start the process of crafting new rules for medical cannabis. In its first public meeting, lawmakers got an earful from groups that support medical cannabis and what they want to see in regulations for the budding industry.
Interest is at a high as the joint legislative work group looking to implement medical marijuana regulations began its work. Lawmakers on the committee are tasked with putting the people's will into place.
And that's what it's important to understand. This is your government and this is your capital. We are grateful you took the time to come down here.
4 pro-medical cannabis groups presented to lawmakers what they would like to see them do to implement the regulations needed to make the system work for patients, cannabis business owners, and the Oklahoma State Health Department, which is tasked with regulating the budding industry. Co-chairman Senator Greg McCourtney asked his fellow work group members to use these meetings to educate themselves on the medical marijuana issues the state is facing.
I encourage you to ask questions, to dig in. There are no easy solutions. There are no easy answers. There are many, many different opinions, and in many cases, more than one of those opinions are right at the exact same time.
The organization, which is leading the current effort asking voters to put both medical and recreational marijuana into the state's constitution, also has a plan for the current medical cannabis law. Green the Vote wants to make sure regulations adopted by the legislature keep the spirit of State Question 788 intact.
Overregulation has been the biggest fear and why this room is so full right now. 788 was very clear in what it permitted and what it didn't permit, and that's where those regulations may need to become more clear, but there's no reason to go against what 788 says.
Medical cannabis activist Chris Moe, who is affectionately known as Uncle Grumpy, explains if the medical marijuana industry in Oklahoma becomes burdened by regulations, it could price some patients out of using cannabis.
And overregulation is going to cost us money we can't afford. I personally survive on disability, and if you make me a patient at an expensive dispensary, I'm going to be stuck on the opioids I'm taking right now because my insurance is not going to cover cannabis.
Cavanis outlined areas where a line needed to be drawn to keep regulations from becoming too burdensome. That includes no restrictions on patient access, no exclusions in the form of cannabis patients can use, no restrictions on medical marijuana business locations except for what was outlined in State Question 788, and allowing workers who might have a felony on their record to work within the industry.
A lot of the people that would be excluded from this are people that could be considered experts within the industry right now. The only reason they have a felony on their record is because they got caught up in some sort of cannabis charge.
Oklahomans for Health is the organization which put together the State Question 788 initiative petition. Its leader, Chip Paul, believes regulation should be framed in such a way that it allows for small business to be able to compete in the marketplace.
This is an important issue to us. Just being able to access this as a business, our community. Again, there's some special interest groups that want to advantage big businesses. There's some special interest groups that want to advantage out-of-state people.
Paul also advises the work group to listen to the pro-medical marijuana community when crafting regulatory legislation.
I think you're going to learn that our community is very sophisticated, that we have way more intelligence and more knowledge about this industry than you would think. A lot of us have worked in the industry. A lot of us are in the industry nationally now, so we know what we're doing.
McCourtney wanted to know why Oklahomans for Health chose such a short time frame to implement medical marijuana regulations.
Seems like the average length of time to implement medical marijuana is a year. You gave us about 75 days. Would love to ask you why.
Hammer, brother, hammer.
Paul underscored that the short timeline was to keep the process moving after voters approved State Question 788. Sean Jenkins with Oklahomans for Cannabis made a simple request after an impassioned plea on behalf of patients: do what is right by the voters of Oklahoma.
To ensure the spirit of 788 is preserved and maintained, do not fall victim to state agencies that have already destroyed the faith and the will of the people.
New Health Solutions is a cannabis trade organization which submitted 275 pages of regulations. The organization believes it enhances State Question 788 to optimize the opportunities for patients and businesses going forward.
This is all the start of something really special here in Oklahoma, that opportunity for patients to receive tons of relief through for their medical conditions. It's also the opportunity to develop extensive business and economic development in the state. That's our commitment here, is to make sure this is done in a timely manner, but that it's done responsibly.
For now, the Board of Health's rules will dictate medical marijuana practices, but the work group is expected to bring about regulations which the legislature will decide either during the next regular session or, if it's called, a special session to address the issue.